Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for joining my talk. I want to introduce to you a solution we built for a client of us. It's a custom B2B e-commerce solution that is based on Apache Open for Business, which is an open source e-commerce implementation, and of course, Magnolia. So we call it AlPaCiNO, so that's why I say hello to my little friend. Please allow me to introduce myself real quick and give a little context so that you know where we are coming from and why we did like this. So I'm Sebastian. I'm the e-commerce dev team lead and co-architect of this solution. The other architect is Guido. He's in the audience there. I have 16 years of experience, mainly with Java technologies. We work in Hamburg, Germany, at Solutions Direct AG. What we basically do is custom software solutions for our clients. I'm just married last Saturday, so this is my honeymoon. My wife will love that. Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm a father of a little sweet 6-month-old daughter, and I love to play and listen to rock music. And I try to keep my handicap low in golf, but not much time anymore. So this was the mission. The client, which is British American Tobacco Germany, you will probably know them by the brands like Lucky Strike or Pall Mall, stuff like that. They came by the end of 2012 to us and asked whether we could build a digital business platform that helps them to support their field forces in B2B sales and marketing activities. So, as you can imagine, the tobacco industry needs a lot of retailers, and most of them are small, so corner tobacco shops. And it's a challenge, of course, as a field force to visit every shop, every retailer, and always tell the same story and stuff like that. So with today's technology, they wanted to improve there. They had a lot of feature ideas, what to do with that. And of course, it's marketing-driven and sales-driven. So as you know, you need some kind of consulting to get to the core. Basically, they wanted to educate retailers of new brands, new flavors, and stuff like that. And they wanted to digitalize the stockpiling, which was mostly accomplished by pen and paper, faxes and phone, and so on. So we said, okay, everything by the side, what you want to do is sell products and serve content. So this is the developer point of view. And then we thought how to do that. As a company who does custom software development, we have a toolbox of weapons of choice, we call them. And one of that is Apache Open for Business. We've done that for many years. We have a big e-commerce solution based on OFBiz for the TUI travel company in Germany. And so we wanted to use that as a shop logic because we know that from top to bottom and have the opportunity to tweak everything and deep dive into the code. And what we always note by them is Magnolia, because we stuffed some Magnolia projects in the past. And on top of that, we needed a single sign-on solution where we choose the central authentication service, CAS. I will talk about it later. And under the hood, there's Nexus E2E. It's a business messaging solution. We use that for interchanging data between customer backends and our solutions. We built that product. It's open source. It's free, so you can download it, evaluate if you want. Talk about that later again. So I want to point out that we decided to do like that because we wanted the separation of concerns. All the shop logic that is there already, we want to reuse because we did heavy customizing in AlPaCiNO already for other clients, even to fit the German market because AlPaCiNO is not targeted to the German market. And on the other hand, we wanted to manage content, but only in Magnolia, not AlPaCiNO. So we have products, we have content, product content, and how to put that together, and that's the story here. So first of all, we had to chop off the GUI of Apache AlPaCiNO. AlPaCiNO comes, if you look at the roughly sketched architecture, comes with an own free marker-based UI framework. So under the UI, there's a business logic event layer, which is basically static Java methods. And yeah, then you have, of course, a database and a data access layer, which is called the entity framework. So the free marker template UI in AlPaCiNO is very static. You cannot do a lot. You build a site, so a page for a product, and then, of course, you can swap images or text descriptions or something like that, but the pain in the you-know-where. And so we decided to, I wanted to describe real quick how that works. You might all know it. You have an HTML form within a free marker template, and here for the example, it's an add to cart action. So you want to put in one field which carries the product ID, and another field, the quantity that you want to add to the cart. And under the hood, in the business logic, there's a static event method that's called add to cart, and that takes the request and then gets all the parameters, request parameters from the request, and processes it and manipulates the state of the shopping cart. So please don't get confused by the arrows of the code snippets. It's just pointing to the big box, not to the small boxes. Okay, so then if we want to get rid of that GUI, then we have to go rid of the form, and we want to replace that with RESTful services. So finally, we don't receive any form data anymore, but just HTTP requests. Here, for example, same example, it's the add to cart action, and we simply post to a certain cart with a product ID and tell the quantity we want to add. So how do we get that to the add to cart event? We have to put something in between, of course, and this is Spring REST template implementation that gets the request and then parses out the product ID and the quantity, and there's the magic. You see the new HTTP servlet request proxy. We just built an object that carries the relevant request parameters and trick that into the add to cart method. And afterwards, we get all the new cart state after the event is executed, and marshal that to JSON and response to the HTTP request. So now Magnolia comes into play, and if Magnolia wants to consume the new RESTful services, it needs some service stub. So we implemented a custom module that implements the other side, the REST client, of course, and that consumes the services. We have a custom content app in the data repository that puts handles to products into the JCR, so that we have something in Magnolia where we can put the content or attach the content to. Of course, we have Magnolia free marker templates where the user experience is created, and we came up with the idea of an MCA decorator. MCA is acronym for Magnolia Content Attached. So this looks like this. It's basically an interface that extends the product interface. Product interface provides methods to access information of the product, like price or, don't know, an internal name, stock information. And then we have another interface that adds methods to access content that should be provided by Magnolia, like text descriptions, short description, long description, name, or images, detail images, small category images, stuff like that. And if the AuthBiz service stub returns a product, then we wrap that into an MCA product implementation, which basically adds all the new methods to that product and knows and handles the access to the content within the JCR. So the content within the JCR is accessed by a custom content app, as I said earlier, and this is how it looks like. So we had a new tile there, gives access for the editor to the product content app. And there you find a list of products that directly come from the index or for the product catalog of AuthBiz. You get the list or update the list by hitting the import products link. So we can schedule that by automatically, of course, but the editor prefers to do that manually. So. And then if you want to edit content of a product, example here, then you get a custom dialog where you can put in, for example, name, description, images, badges. I don't know whether you can see it, but also something like cross-seller associations and visibility for certain customer segments. And when the editor saves all that information, then you see publishing becomes available, and it gets published to the website. So here's one example. It's the product category for Lucky Strike cigarettes. And you see here merged information coming from Magnolia CMS, which is all the user content, edited content, and some master data that comes from the client's backend, like the price or how many cigarettes are in the pack. Okay, so there was a pitfall. We decided that we only want to remote control AuthBiz. We don't want the editor to go into the GUI of AuthBiz, the admin GUI, and tweak any data there, because we want to keep the experience even for the editor straight. So we decided that everything that you want to do with a product and with the product master data is offered by the Magnolia GUI. So for example, if you want to change the availability state, then there's a checkbox in the product dialog and you can hit it, and then this information is posted to the AuthBiz database, and there is some access control for products, who can see what, and also a search index that needs to know about that. And then we found out that all the information that you do to product master data, or all the changes, are immediately in production. There's no staging in AuthBiz, but this is not a good experience if you know the Magnolia experience and you have a staging. So we wanted to implement that as well. And then we came up with this idea. We're still here in the content app, and then we moved down in the stack. And I first tell you how the products get into the database. So here we have our Nexus E2E business messaging solution, and it has a product import pipeline. The product import pipeline receives the data from the client's backend and pushes that into the database of AuthBiz. So it's product data. everything they have in their ERP, which is basically SAP, I think. What we then came up with the idea of just doubling that data stream. So sounds like redundancy, but it's not, because here you see a snippet how we import that. We just prefixed every product EIN with a $sign to signal that this is a product handle that is for the authoring system, and on the other side the original product EIN is for production or for public. And how we do that, basically, I don't know if you're interested in the details, it's just a free market template even down there, and it processes the incoming data and just goes twice through the list and prefixes each product EIN with a $sign. So I don't want to talk about how orders come back to the client system, but that makes the image complete. I just want to tell you more about authoring products. So now you see an author and a public instance of Magnolia and AuthBiz, and I want to show you how they play together. If one publishes a product, then of course all the product content that is maintained in Magnolia gets published as you know it. But we also implemented a product activation action custom that uses the AuthBiz service stubs and then signals the publishing event to AuthBiz. So in AuthBiz, we have an activation controller who manages that request and then copies all the relevant data from the dollar EIN, how we call it, to the non-dollar EIN. So it's a simple process. It took only 1 day to implement that, so I'm still proud of this idea. So, of course, we need to tell with each request AuthBiz in which scope it should act. So whether it's a dollar product or it's a public product. And this is done by an additional parameter. You can remember my example in the beginning, the add to cart action, and we just put in another parameter that indicates the scope. And yeah, we just detect what installation type we have there and then append that to the URL. And the interesting part is that Magnolia is completely agnostic of this dollar process. Magnolia can, the author instance, the same as the public instance, they can both just use the API, and AuthBiz can detect what scope and knows or manipulates the EIN from the request, puts the $sign in or leaves that out, and knows what to do. Okay, so now we have a service API for e-commerce, and we have Magnolia using it, and we have, of course, authorized users that use the system. It's a closed shop, so it's not publicly available. Yeah, we have to know or tell AuthBiz on whose behalf Magnolia interacts, so which user. And that's why we wanted to establish a single sign-on. Single sign-on because we have several installations for several tenants. And on the other hand, we need a proxy authentication method that authenticates all the service requests. So how's this done? Magnolia, I condensed that to only one box now, and then central authentication service comes into play. It's basically a standalone web application, and it works like that. So if our little friend Bruno comes and makes a page request to Magnolia, then in Magnolia there's a servlet filter that detects that it's not logged in. He's not logged in, and redirects to the login page that's completely transparent for the user, only a HTTP redirect. Bruno sees there a login form and hacks in his login data. And then, if that was successful, the CAS responds with the user info. So Magnolia does not know anything of users. It's all in the CAS database. So if CAS says, okay, this is an authenticated user, then Magnolia lets him in. Oh, my watch stopped, so I have to look whether I'm in time. Yeah, and then he makes a card request, so something that interacts with OAuth-BIS. And then Magnolia needs to gather a proxy ticket that authenticates the service request. So for that purpose, there's another parameter that is appended to the URL, which is just a proxy ticket. OAuth-BIS verifies the proxy ticket against CAS. And if CAS acknowledges, confirms, then it also gives all the user data to OAuth-BIS. So OAuth-BIS also knows who's the user and can do something in the database. So create a handle for the user and take all the information it needs, like shipping address and stuff like that. So again, we have separation of concerns. We don't have to synchronize any user data information between the web applications. Just CAS knows who is, and can provide the data to all the other applications. And then, of course, when the request was processed, then the updated card state is published back to or responded back to Magnolia, and then we can there update the card GUI and do stuff like that. So there are more services in this game that we need. So we had a couple of microservices, for example, for customer self-service to if someone wants to change his password or its email address or something like that, just an idea, or we calculate bonus points, that's also a shared service. And we have a high complexity in deployment. So for all the tenants that we have 4 tenants, all have an author and public system, OAuth-BIS, CAS, and stuff like that. And so we found out that our complexity for deployment and development and configuration got a real pain. So we wanted to go to more cattle and less cat. You all know what that means. So finally, I want to show you how the state was when we started. We had a Windows hosting environment, Windows-based, and a lot of configuration files, but only small amount of differing parameters. But we had to maintain around 24 different setups for all our environments, test, dev, production, for the 4 tenants, of course, and also for author and public, just talking about Magnolia. Then SSL certificates and the CAS setup. So quite a lot of information. So configuration, as you can imagine, was error-prone, and the deployment took sometimes hours. And then now we transferred everything to a Docker-based hosting, so we wrapped Magnolia into a Docker container. And now we have a condensed and hierarchy-based configuration, so that we only have to maintain 2 setups for the author and public, and everything else is contained in a couple of Docker Compose files that carry all the specific parameters. So we don't have to copy all the configuration files, but only inject the parameter we want, and only if it differs from the other setup. And that enabled us to run all the instances virtually on on the same domain. So even in production, if we tweak our DNS or the hosts file, then we can go to the production URL and have our dev environment. And that's a huge benefit because we are very close to production when we develop or test something. And also, we have to configure that once, mostly, and can run it everywhere. So if we have configured in development, then we can push that to production really easy. And yeah, so comes that deployment time went down to minutes. So mostly, if we just exchange a container, then the most customers don't recognize that something changed. And of course, we don't have yet a real blue-green deployment. That's still on the agenda, but the client is our client, British American Tobacco, is still already happy enough because they don't recognize any downtimes anymore. So yeah, that's the story. Thanks for listening,